Hello. Oh my gosh, it is the beginning of summer, which already feels like the end of summer to me. Summer is so sweet and juicy. I wish it would never end. So I've been thinking today, this was prompted by a listener who asked me to talk more about focus. I did an episode recently on how I focus in my own work. Um, and I wanted to talk today about some additional ways that I focus and some metrics that I use to decide on what to focus on next. So I think those metrics will be helpful for you. But I want to start by just telling you a little story and push back on some advice that I see given to specifically to artists. But this may apply more broadly. I just want to say to everybody listening that I think you can do all the things, actually, right? Counterintuitively. The thing is, you can't do them all at the same time. So it's really important to take things one at a time in order to really give your full attention and energy to things and to do them well. To me, working on a bunch of different things at the same time, the only thing that accomplishes is you getting a bunch of stuff done really badly. Right. And why bother? Right. I learned this as an artist, like who needs more half-assed paintings in the world? Literally no one. Like who cares about okay artwork? To me, why make art if it's not going to be excellent? Right. So I guess I feel that way about all things. Why put your energy into work that's just okay? Like better to focus and do things that are really really good. When you make work that is so, so good, you feel proud of it. You feel energetic about talking about it. You feel like it really will help people. This is a sort of attitude that I learned as an artist because of being an artist. But you know what? I just think it's true for everybody. Why bother doing anything but excellent work? At least if you're the one paying yourself, right? If you're working for somebody else, that calculus does kind of change. And I understand why. To be honest, as a person who employs other people, I have often felt very jealous of employees that will get paid no matter what they're doing. That is actually not true when you are an entrepreneur. When you run your own ship, if you don't do things well, you don't make any money. Your business doesn't grow, and it can go the other way. It can close. All right. So you can do all the things, but you can't do them all at once. So let's talk about it. Okay. So some advice that I have seen given to artists in various like professional development books, for example, like Jackie Battenfield, who PS, her book is awesome. This book called The Artist's Guide. I've read it. Many people have it. It's a great book, but there's this one. And so generally I'm going to say, I love it. I think it's well done, but it has this one piece of advice in it that I really object to. It talks about having multiple streams of income, basically not trying to rely on any one stream of income at a time. Now, I understand that in the context of being an artist, where your income can be so unreliable and so fickle, there is some logic behind this attitude. Like you might not be able to depend on getting grant income consistently because you cannot completely control whether or not you get each grant. So there is some logic. I'm not saying it's a dumb piece of advice. However, I will say I have some pushback because having to focus on multiple streams of incomes, what it means is you scatter your attention, right? It's hard to be really, really good at writing grant applications and really, really good at applying for RFPs for public art proposals and really, really good at like making approaches to new galleries and getting shows, on and on and on. There's lots of different, and simultaneously having like small scale direct to buyer Etsy shop for your work. If you try to do all those different things, they're all basically different business models. It's like you running 4 different businesses instead of just one. So I'm going to tell you a little story as a counterpoint to this splitting your focus idea. There's an artist who is in my studio building here in Nashville, or used to be. named Kyle. He's a ceramic artist, a potter. His work is just exceptionally beautiful, right? He's very, very good. And he makes his living entirely from selling his ceramics. These are craft items like functional pottery. So they're, vases, mugs, things like that. Gorgeous, gorgeous work. So he was telling me this story that he had basically two different businesses going. Now he recognized that these were two different businesses. He did wholesale and he did retail. So he would go to like craft shows, like the Big Crafty, and like be selling his work there directly to a person who's going to use the mug. But he also had a wholesale business where he's selling his work to, galleries and high-end stores that will carry his work, right? Now, I actually can't remember which one he decided to focus on, but what he was telling me is that one year he decided, like he found it really hard to switch back and forth between doing one and doing the other because it's an entirely different audience, right? Selling to store owners versus directly to a person who's going to use a mug, who's wandering in a craft show. It's completely different messaging, completely different needs. It's just a completely different setup on his end. So he decided one year he was going to eliminate one and focus fully just on the other. And it was pretty 50, his income was pretty evenly split between the two. And I think it was a hard decision. I think he chose wholesale. And so he just decided, I'm not doing craft shows anymore. I'm just going to 100% focus my energy on getting my work in stores and galleries. He was telling me that the year he made this decision, the first year that he worked only on one instead of on two, his income doubled. I just want you to take that in for a second. As soon as he put all his focus on one thing instead of splitting it between two, his income doubled. So that means from the wholesale business, he made 4 times more, not twice as much, but 4 times more, because it didn't just replace the income lost from the direct-to-consumer pottery sales. His whole income doubled. So he sold 4 times as much in wholesale. So to me, that is a story that illustrates the power of focus. I have found exactly the same thing to be true in my business. I don't have such a direct story to share with you like that, although I have many little stories. But I think that's a really good illustration of what happens when you do put all your eggs in one basket, when you do put your focus on doing one thing really, really well. I will give you a counterexample. Like I tend to really work in seasons, which is important for me because I really want to be able to focus on one thing at a time. And to me, switching back and forth from one mode to the other is painful. It's difficult. I find the transition really, really hard. And, just a couple weeks ago, I had a total screw up, which is the kind of thing that happens to me all the time when I'm trying to switch back and forth from art brain to accounting brain. So just to illustrate a fuck up on my end, I was offering this free class about how to thrive in a recession, right? I put on that class in June because I just wanted to have kind of one last push before everybody was like off doing their summer stuff to help people kind of, just get a piece of education that would help you in your studio, help you kind of set up for the summer and help you, just feel good about running your business and like have some strategies through a potential economic downturn, which has, kind of been in the news for a long time now. So I'm offering this free class, right? But what I'm really trying to do over the summer, I mean, here you are listening to my podcast. This is me contact switching back into Sunlight Tax. But really what I do over the summer is I'm painting a show. I have a solo show in November. So I'm working on producing a show of painting and sculpture. And so I'm not really home at Sunlight Tax too much over the summer. I do have a team and I do have people running it. So don't worry. It's still going on and I do check in. But anyway, I was offering this class and I have a whole system kind of in the back end about like, I send announcements, I send reminders. I have like a whole email sequence set up to remind people to show up. So I'm in my studio really excited about this work that I'm making. In fact, I had a great week in the studio, is why this happened. And the next week I had sort of on my schedule the time, like check back into Sunlight Tax, do the tasks that are outstanding. And I look to see, and it's the day before I'm putting on this free class. Now, I was expecting, this time last year, I had maybe 200 to 300 signups for this class. And so I'm like checking in to see how many people are signed up, expecting something in the low hundreds. And I look and there's 25 people. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And it just hits me looking at that number. Oh my God, I was so excited about my studio that I just completely forgot to announce that I was offering this class. In fact, I don't even know how the 25 people did sign up because I never sent an announcement. So it's the day before the class. We did manage to do a little last minute push, and a couple, maybe 100 people signed up. And if you were one of them, I'm very grateful to you, and I hope you got a lot out of the class. But the point is, me being focused on my studio over the summer means it's really easy for me to screw things up in Sunlight Tax, right? It's really easy for me to drop the ball. So I find I do my best work when I am all in, right? That's how I work. And my friend Kyle is a good example of how that can have a huge income impact on your bottom line as well. So let's talk about focusing on one thing at a time, doing your best work with a sense of focus. So a piece of wisdom that I picked up when I was in Rachel Rogers' program. If you don't know Rachel Rogers, she's a really, really awesome business coach. She's a lawyer and a coach. She happens to live in North Carolina, but she's from New York. And she's really focused on teaching women, Black and brown women specifically and especially, how to just have better businesses, build better businesses in the world and make more money. So in her program, she taught not to offer a million different offerings in your business, but to offer one thing that you put all your stuff into, right? So offer one group coaching program where anytime you offer a new course, you just put it into that program. So the cool thing about that, right, is that if you have one program where everything you do goes into that program, then the people who are in that program, what they're getting is awesome. What they're getting is all of you, all of your attention, all of your energy, all of your creativity is going into this one thing. It also means on the back end for you as the business owner, you only have one type of sales you need to do. You don't have to have a launch plan for 6 different offerings, right? Because you need a marketing plan for every single thing you offer. And when you're only offering one thing, you can offer it more frequently and you can offer it more effectively, and you can hone in on exactly the messaging and the launch plan that helps to get sales of your program. Plus, you get better results in your program because you pay attention to only one thing. Right? So this was a genius idea that I got from Rachel Rogers, and I have totally enacted it in my business. I have a program called Money Bootcamp, and anytime I want to make a new training on, updated tax laws, or, I think of a new angle on how to better manage your finances in your business, I record a training. I might offer it to the public, but then I stick it inside Money Bootcamp. So it becomes part of the program of Money Bootcamp. So anybody who's bought Money Bootcamp before, they get a new bonus, right? And so to me, that's really awesome. That just enhances the value of the thing that I offer. Instead of me selling afresh, this year's tax updates, the Secure 2.0 tax update module, or this new thing on a new method for calculating your quarterly taxes, right? What I do is I just give it to my core customers every single time. And then they come to know that they're always going to get anything new that I offer. They know where to find it. They know that they're going to get it. And they just check their bonuses section inside Money Bootcamp, and they know whatever new training I just did that they have access to. To me, that just works so much better. And it simplifies the back end of my business. It makes me only need one marketing plan and not, 600. It also means I'm a creative person. I like doing this work. It means I don't shoot myself in the foot every time I have a new idea. It basically makes it more productive for me to be generative and have new ideas, because my core offering gets better and better and better every time I have a new idea, rather than if I sold it separately, me sort of taking attention away from my core offering and having to switch my focus back and forth between 10 different things that I offer. So I just think that's a little piece of strategy that I have picked up in the world. I've implemented it in my own business, and it works really, really well for me. So I just want to kind of share that with you. Hopefully that is helpful. I also want to talk about batching. So for me, like I said, switching back and forth between like one item to another, for example, my art studio and my tax business, Sunlight Tax, it takes a lot of attention and I get really scattered. It's not great. So I really just like go to my studio in the slowest time of year. And I try to focus on just like one thing, which is delivering a great podcast. But another way that I have done batching is, so I'm telling you the secret right here, right now, that like I'm in the studio primarily over the summer. Like if I have a show at another time of year, of course, I'll put in some studio time elsewhere. But in general, I'm really focused on Sunlight Tax for most of the rest of the year. But when I'm in the studio over the summer, what I will do is I will take tons of photos of work in progress and, like studio shots and things like that. And I will meet them out over social media over the course of the next year. I don't like put them out all at once, right? And I'm creating a fiction. I fully admit that I'm doing this. I create a fiction that I'm in the studio all the time. I might post those pictures in December and January. In December and January, I'm not in the studio. That's like the height of tax season. It's not wise for me to be in the studio at a time when my phone is ringing off the hook for people who want to get set up for the new tax year or do year-end tax planning, right? But I have this batch of photographs that I like batched out during my summer studio time, and I'm kind of spreading it out through the rest of the year. I don't feel bad about creating that fiction in a world that, punishes women and people who rely on income from other jobs. There's plenty of evidence and, direct evidence in the art world that people who have other jobs get really like sort of punished as not being serious artists. And I think that that's totally unfair. And not realistic and quite elitist and anti-family, caregiver for sure. And so I say, fuck that. And I just create this fiction to appease that sort of part of the world that, I don't agree with. I'm like, okay, if you want to see it that way, I'll show it to you that way, but that's not how I do it. So you're seeing me get a little ornery here. Okay. But I do think that it is, I don't think I'd make good artwork if I put in just this. And now this is really personal, but like, I don't think that my art would be as good as it is if I just like worked on it once every Friday afternoon. I mean, maybe that would become my rhythm. I would learn to work that way. Like some of you do work that way, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions. Like for me, that doesn't work. For me, I'm such a sort of heavy focuser that I like to dive all the way in and be completely absorbed as much as possible, which is why batching and working in seasons works so well for me. And this is not always possible, right? Like even I, who am like prioritize working that way, even I have to, maintain my podcast and my newsletter, maintain Sunlight Tax over the summer months that are really light, where a lot of you go on vacation and don't want to think about taxes in July. And that's fine. But I like to dive in really deeply. And so I just want to, talk to you about when you're cultivating the various skills that you need to in your business, each one of them takes some time and takes some energy to cultivate, right? Whether the skill is grant writing or getting good at pitching clients in meetings or running launches. Maybe it's building your team and developing your leadership skills, creating SOPs, that is standard operating procedures. If you have not hired yet, you maybe don't have SOPs in your business, but it's a little piece of magic. But these things take time and they take energy, and they also take repetition. And so I think focusing on one thing and repeating it until you get good at it is really helpful, right? It's a way that you learn how to do it better and better and grow. And in creative work, sometimes we learn to hate repetition. In fact, sometimes we are taught to hate repetition. Repeating something doesn't feel creative. We want to create, we like that generative act. We like doing it the first time where you learn all that stuff and you have all that creative energy, but then repeating it the creativity starts to feel like it dissipates and you want to move on to the next thing, right? A lot of us get bored when things get too repetitive. And that's not just creative people, but it is creative people especially. There's even official teaching in the creative world that we shouldn't repeat ourselves, right? That it's actually negative and not creative. And I want to illustrate this with an example from my own life. Like I remember a studio visit in graduate school. It was Dana Schutz. She's a fantastic painter. If you're not in the art world, Dana Schutz is just a fabulous painter, also a very, very wonderful human being. So this was a great studio visit, but I remember her saying to me, because I was painting a lot of pattern in my work at the time. And I remember her saying, like, don't paint that. Don't paint the pattern. You can imply a pattern, but don't actually spend your time on it. And I was just thinking, right, yeah, I understand the logic there. Like you want to spend your time only on the quote creative parts of a painting, right? And this is not quote creative, but I actually have a really different attitude about pattern in my work, right? Like maybe it's because I have a mild OCD that I really love pattern, but I paint intricate, ridiculously detailed patterns in my work. I have for a long time, and I really, really like it. Partly, I think because I have this mild OCD, it actually is very soothing to me. I find pattern to put me in a state, almost a trance state. And so I do these complex, difficult, detailed patterns, and it actually serves to me as a form of meditation. And as funny as it is, like the painting is different with it versus without it. Like it makes a difference. And it gets me into a state of deep focus. And the funny thing is that this same quality of sinking into a deep, repetitive task is something I have translated from my painting to my tax work. So doing taxes, a lot of why people hate it is that it is also very detailed and very repetitive. And I find that I actually enjoy that about it. Obviously, it's not for everyone, but for me, I find that I really enjoy that detailed, repetitive work. I find I focus into it. There's something about it that feels meditative. And yes, I find that to be true even with taxes. I'm a weirdo. I will own it. But you might find this too. Please send me a DM if you can relate to this, because I literally have no idea if I am the world's only weirdo like this or if this is universal. So tell me. So I get into a state of flow when I am doing repetitive things. I really do. And so I actually really enjoy repetition. But in entrepreneurship, growing a business, repetition is magic. It's magic. It's actually the thing that I think a lot of creative people get bored with and don't like about running a business. And I may be the unique weirdo because I do like it, but I have learned that it's really valuable. So I want to help kind of talk to you about why I love repetition and how valuable I have found it to be. So you're doing hard things all the time in your business, right? You are not going to nail them on the first try. The only thing you can nail on the first try is something easy. And if you're running a business where all you do is easy, you're going to have tons of competition and there's no way you're going to have a great business. In other words, if it's not hard, it's probably not worth doing. So I want you to just, accept the way that the human brain works and think about, your first attempt being just that, a first attempt, a thing that you're going to learn from, hopefully have a little bit of success, a little bit of reward, enough that you want to keep going. But the second time you try something difficult, whether that is writing a grant, whether it is running a launch, whether it is having a kickoff meeting with a client, you're going to do it better the second time you do it. You're going to do it even better the third time you do it. You're even better the fourth, and then better the fifth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? We get better with things with practice. So I realize that some of you are already like tuning out and like, oh my God, that sounds so boring. But I myself, so I run launches to sell Money Bootcamp, to kind of illustrate the problems that it solves and to show specifically how Money Bootcamp solves them. That's kind of the role of what a launch is. It's not a product that exists elsewhere in the world. And so I have to really showcase what it is, what it solves, and how I do it, and how it's going to work for somebody and what results somebody can expect to get, right? That is the point of my launches when I launch my program, Money Bootcamp. So I have found that I do better with each launch, and I will do essentially the same launch over and over and over and over again. And it gets better, right? So a lot of you feel like you might be bored out of your skull doing work like that, but I found ways to make it feel fascinating. For one thing, I track my metrics with every launch that I run. So if you run an online business and you do launches, you already know about this. But if you don't, I'll give you a little window into my world. So I talk about Money Bootcamp. I open up these sort of problems that people have in their businesses and how Money Bootcamp is built to solve them. And I will track the metrics of how many people came to the free class where I'm teaching about these problems and how to solve them, right? So how many people signed up for the class? How many of those people actually showed up to the class? How many of the people who showed up to the class actually joined the program? How many of the people who signed up originally and are getting the emails eventually sign up during that launch period, right? So these are 4 different metrics. And I have a spreadsheet where I compare this data, and I can actually watch my progress, and I can watch how I improve those metrics in the next launch over the launch that happened before. And I can work on things. It will show me. So for example, if I advertise my free class where I'm going to talk about the problems and talk about the solutions, if I advertise that free class and I get tons of people signing up, but then only 20% of those people actually show up to the class, I know that I need more effort getting people who've signed up to show up. And so I built this thing that is called, in my world, a show up sequence. It is an email automation that says like, hey, welcome. I'm so excited. Here's some things to think about. Remember, this is the date. This is the link to join. I'm so excited. And so it's just emails being like, hey, remember this thing you signed up for? It's free. You were excited about it. Let's stay excited about it. And it's going to be on this day, right? That's my show up sequence. So I have built that and I tweak that and I watch those metrics to see like, okay, can I get my show up rate higher than 20%? And yes, I have. I've gotten it very high. But it is through watching the data that I can see where my problems are, where the disconnects are, where people aren't feeling inspired, where they don't get what I'm saying, right? And so I'm watching that stuff, and that becomes a way to sort of like feed me little clues about where I can improve my process. So it also helps me know, because there's so many different things you can try in a launch, and there's a whole world of online business people who be like, try this strategy, and you can spend a lot of effort like trying a whole bunch of different strategies, and some of them work really well and some of them don't. So that spreadsheet, those metrics, they help keep me focused on the metrics that really move the needle in my business and show me where my effort is worthwhile versus where it is not. This helps to keep my launches, which can be overwhelming and very difficult. It keeps them focused on the things they need to be focused on and stops me from scattering my attention to all kinds of bells and whistles that are not necessarily helping anything. Doing the repetition of one launch after another thing it does for me is it helps me survive if I have a terrible launch. Like occasionally something happens. I had a launch once on January 6th, and right in the middle of my launch, this news started coming out. I know most of you are thinking January 6th, that date is quite familiar to me, right? So I'm in the middle of this like live launch and I'm doing my thing. And I start seeing the chat explode where people are like, are you watching the news right now? Are you seeing that people are storming the Capitol building? So, there are things that happen that are way beyond your control. Maybe people storm the United States Capitol while you're in the middle of your like one time only big event, which happened to me. And so that launch was, you can imagine, a little bit distracted. People were rightfully really upset about an event that was happening out in the world. And so I'm not going to comment on January 6th, but just to say like, weird shit happens in the world. Oh my gosh. So, it helps me like doing that repetition of this launch one after another and having a next one on the schedule already. It just helps me survive when a launch does not go the way I planned. And it's numbers are more terrible, very disappointing from where I expected them to be. Okay. So that is my spiel on repetition and why it's really good and why I am totally pro. You may be, you may not be, but at least you can learn from me the sort of like the case for repetition. The second part of what I want to talk to you about to focus is the expense of contact switching and the value of focusing on one thing at a time. Okay. So what is contact switching? If you haven't heard that term before, I think it comes from computer science, but it's the idea of when you move your focus, you move your attention from one thing to another, it's cognitively expensive. You get tired. Your brain gets tired when you move back and forth from one item to another. Small side note, this is why email is exhausting. And this is why I don't check email first thing in the day, because your inbox represents a massive amount of contact switching, because one email will be about an event you're doing. One email will be about like a billing issue. One email, it will be about all sorts of different things at the same time. So you're going from one mode to another, back and forth over and over and over again. So I don't know if you've ever had the experience of like running through a full inbox and solving all those things and then feeling like you didn't have the energy to do a big project afterwards. Email is exhausting for that reason, because contact switching, moving your focus, your attention back and forth between things is cognitively expensive. Okay. So I have learned to batch my work for that reason. And I tend to work whenever I can in seasons, right? If everybody out there if my entire audience is going to go on vacation in July and August or not be in their teaching job anymore and really switch their focus, then I don't need to have my foot on the accelerator of my business during the summer months. And in fact, maybe that's the time for me to bring my business down to its minimum viable operability and go make my own work in the studio, right? Or do the big projects for Sunlight Tax, which is what I do. So the more that I find that deep focus and working on just one thing in my business works for me, the more I want to apply it to everything. So I got really, really serious about that. And I have actually decided over the past several years, just to bring you in on my thinking, I've decided to edit my business. So the first really big, one of the edits I did was staffing. So it was very, very expensive to run my program the way I was. I had a membership and I actually had all different tiers of membership, and it required a lot of tracking to see like who was owed what service and when I had fulfilled those. And, I had to sort of track who had gotten what so far and who was still owed what. It was very complicated and it required a lot of staff. And when I have a lot of staff, I need to offer my program at a higher price point because I have to pay the staff, right? And I have a 401k plan for my employees because I like to practice what I preach. And it's expensive to pay people well, to treat your employees well, and to hire people who are really good. So that was really rough. And I realized it's also something I want to keep in balance with being able to offer this program at a lower price point for people who don't have as much income, and people who are just starting out and feel more sensitive about what they can invest in their businesses. So as I had some staff attrition, I decided not to rehire. I decided instead to simplify my offerings. So the first simplification I did was to eliminate the memberships. So I don't offer them. I'm fulfilling the contracts that I have outstanding, of course, but I have not been offering my program as a membership anymore. I ended the membership. So I restructured the course so that it is one-time payment. There's a payment plan, but it's like you join once and you get the whole program up front and that's it, right? You have it forever. But it's also self-study. So I can automate some of the sort of like updates for people, but it doesn't require as much staff and expense on my end to administer my program. So that's one simplification I made that's helped me be able to focus on things in my business. I also knew that I wanted to start a podcast. And so in order to do that, I needed to focus and I needed more time, right? So I knew running my tax prep business is one of the most, probably 80% of the stress in my business and maybe 10% of the profit. Running a tax prep business is just really difficult, really, really stressful, difficult work. And it is almost impossible to make a good profit unless you're fully focused on that, which I was not. So I decided that the trade-off that I would make in my business was I would start a podcast, which is what I always wanted to do. And I find really fruitful and wonderful. But in order to do it, the commitment I made to myself was to sell the tax preparation piece of my business. So once I got the negotiations underway for that, it took a lot of work. I did a lot of research into other tax firms that I wanted to make an arrangement with. And there are not a lot out there, I have to say, that can speak well to self-employed people, creative people, misfits and weirdos. And also offer things at a price point that is low enough, because accounting services, frankly, it costs a lot of money. There's a lot of regulation that you, the consumer, might not be aware that your tax practitioner has to comply with. So it's just a really tough business. But I did find a wonderful firm that I feel so happy with. I negotiated a really good package for my clients. I did all this transition work. It was a lot of work to do, but I really care so much for the tax clients that I have helped to nurture and grow for many years at this point. And I wanted to make sure that they all knew what kind of care I put into transitioning them. And I was not just going to say, sorry, I'm closed, go find somebody else. I really wanted to give them a great opportunity and a great path forward. So getting that ball in motion it took me almost a year. It was very difficult work, but knowing that I was not going to have a tax season to run enabled me the mental space to begin planning a podcast. And that was how I did that. So I think it's really easy to look at a business like mine, like, she does this, she does that, she does that. Yeah, you might think that I do it all at the same time, but I don't. I do one thing at a time. And so part of how I started the new thing was to drop an old thing. Or to transition out an old thing. Okay. So my next project in case you're curious, is writing a book. So I've always wanted to write a book. I was actually approached by this really wonderful agent. It was like kind of an opportunity of a lifetime. I did some research into that and I just was like, okay, what is it going to take to do this? I wanted to like really see how much work it would be, what the timeline would look like, if it's appropriate at this stage of my business. And yeah, I was really nervous about committing to writing a book because I know it's a lot of work and that it could pull my focus away from the other things I have in my business. I never want to let go of my focus on my program, Money Bootcamp, or on this podcast. So I had to have my systems built up enough and structured well enough that I could have the space and time to actually write a book. So there's no question that selling the tax practice was critical in order to say yes to that project. But I'm proud to say I have said yes. I am in the just proposal stage of the book. But I'm super excited that that is the project that's coming next. And I want to share with you just the decision metric that I use to make that decision and that I think might be helpful for you. The next time you are faced with a big, like, should I, shouldn't I decision about taking on a new project in your own work, whether you're an artist or a design agency or running some completely other type of business. So my metric was basically first to look at my vision as a company. What is my vision? And I'll share that with you. My vision for Sunlight Tax has always been, from day one, has been to get clear, accessible tax information into the hands of creative and purpose-driven people who are self-employed across the entire US. So that vision is maximalist, right? It's about serving the many. And this is one of the reasons that selling my tax preparation business made sense. It fit my vision, because in the tax prep business, I can only handle, a couple hundred people, right? I can serve 150 people doing their tax returns, and that's it. And it's not very scalable. Whereas if I do speaking, writing, podcasting, I can reach a lot more people. And I think there are so many people who need good tax information, like clear and accessible and empathetic tax information, that I just want to be able to serve more than that couple hundred people. So that was part of my decision metric. Does it fit my vision? Does it further my vision? Or does it accomplish my vision better than the thing that I'm letting go of? Another thing I want you to look at that I looked at was my current capacity. You really don't want to overcommit, because then you start not delivering the things you're already committed to, and then your business starts to suffer, right? So what's my capacity, and what will it take if my capacity is not where I want it to be for this project? What will it take to open up additional capacity? This is where editing comes in. This is where letting other things go makes a big difference. And then what should I work on in order to reach my vision? What would serve me reaching that vision better? A lot of times that requires effort and time, right? You grow over time. And I will let you in on a piece of wisdom that I gleaned from this wonderful educator called Paul Jarvis. I talked about him before. Paul Jarvis has a book called Company of One. And he said, it's much easier to start a business in one-to-one service, because that's a high-priced service and you can live on that. You can live on the income from a small base of clients when you're doing one-to-one services. In order to have a one-to-many business, you need a very large audience, and it simply takes time to build a large audience. If you want to live off of the sales of a $29 book, you're going to have to work your ass off growing an audience big enough to be able to live off $29 increments. And I frankly could never have done that in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 of my business. It's been years to build to the point that I have right now. But and so Paul Jarvis would say, build your audience over time and then transition from one-to-one service to one-to-many service as you grow your audience. So basically, I'm undergoing that transition at the moment. I love my one-on-one work, and I'm not sure I will ever give it up because I simply love hearing, talking with individual people about their tax concerns, their business setup concerns. It makes me feel in touch with what's going on with people, what people are worried about today versus 2 years ago. So I'm not sure I'll ever let that go, but as you scale a business, of course, it becomes harder and harder to serve a lot of one-on-one people. And because my vision is to give this information to a really broad audience, I do feel like I want to grow into a space where I talk to more people. So writing a book, having a podcast, these things do feel like the logical next step. The cool thing on the audience end is that it means I will eventually be able to lower my prices quite a bit more. You can get a lot of what I offer through a $29 book. And there's a whole audience I've never been able to serve at that price point. I'm still not there yet, to be honest, but I'm hoping to get there. So, okay. So those are my metrics for how I decided. I decided what is my vision? What is my current capacity? What will it take for me to open up more capacity? And what can I be working on to reach my vision? All right. So I hope that's been really, I hope that metric has been kind of helpful for you if you're struggling with what should I work on next? Should I take on this project or not? Do I want to transition my business from this thing to that thing? Basically just like, how do I spend my limited amount of energy and focus to get as far towards my vision for the world as I want to? So yeah, I want you to think about that. I hope that this has been helpful for you. So you can, to just summarize the takeaways here, you can have it all. You can, but you can't have it all at once. So you are going to grow in your capacity, in your wisdom, in your abilities over time. So I would use this metric. What is my current capacity? What will increase that capacity? What is my vision? Don't stress about all the things. Just stress about one thing. Just one thing at a time. All right. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I so appreciate all of you. Send me a message at Sunlight Tax on Instagram. I love to hear from you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'm so grateful for that. This video is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links I reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.